Coach D's here. There's people from all over the corners that we can see, and we appreciate all your time for coming. All the golfers today. I mean, I know I played and it was hot, and I didn't think I was going to make it a couple times, but a good thing Pat Collins held me up, so we're good. Nice job, Pat. We're going to change up the game plan a little tonight, where normally we stand up here and tell you the scores, which I'm going to do quick, and then we have a bunch of fun pulling raffle tickets and picking on people. And I know you guys saw all the great prizes that we had out there, like this tournament is accustomed to having, but the girls are going to kind of pick tickets and put those on all the prizes in the back room, because we have, you know, some special guests here tonight, some speakers that we want to highlight. So I'm going to go over the golf real quick today, and I appreciate all you guys playing. John, this is 20 years, correct? 20 years and 19 playing, okay. So I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to speak, I think, the truth here. This is it, right? Are you sure, John? I just said something to Subkowski. I said, is John sure this is the last one? We've told everybody this is the last Joel Stevens event, and it is the last event, but yeah, John's saying never say never, and if anybody knows him, we got problems. Okay, so real quick, we're paying the top 4 places in the golf tournament. There was 2 teams tied at 60 for the 3rd and 4th place. Tiebreaker went to the team that shot 60, Rainbow Restoration. That was my team. Nice job, guys. Okay, the 3rd place team was also 60, the team of Brewer, the Brewer team. Is that Steph? So come on up here, guys. You got a choice of what to pick for your prize. And then team at 59, the West team. All right, you guys come on up. And then a team of 56, Brian Harris and his team. So, all right, they have some gift certificates to pick from. First place team gets to pick first, just because they do. Just because they do. You get to pick a round of 4 at Corning, Elmira, Willow Creek, or Mark Twain. How about here? Okay, see Kevin Kirkova, he'll take care of you. Okay, next place, what do you guys want? Corning? You want Corning? All right, Corning it is. What's this one? Corning Country Club. Okay, Cal, you want to play Willow Creek or Mark Twain? 4 greens fees. Mark Twain? Okay, there you go, pal. Good job. Yep. Okay, let's move on to the long drive. And I know I was squeezing to hit it out there, but she beat all of us. Did you guys hear that? She beat all of us. Steph Nardi, long drive. Nice job, Steph. And closest to the pin is Scott Bradley. Scott here? You gonna take it, Cal? Okay. All right, let's move on to the skins real quick, which you guys are definitely interested in. And we had a 2 on number 14, the team of Derigi. Derigi. That is $350. There was $700 in the pot. Mike will be at the bar, and he's buying. Father, follow him. All right, and the last skin is an eagle on number 10. I didn't stick around to watch it. They were playing behind us. It was their last hole, so it's kind of sketchy if they really even made it or not. But Pix Plumbing, the best pipe player in town. Where is he? $350. Pickram Plumbing and Heating. There he is. Man, the myth, the legend. He didn't make the pot. You're right. There's no way. There's no way. Now, if anybody's going to buy a drink, I know it's going to be Pick, so follow him for real. All right, what else do I have? I think that's it. I'm good on golf, man. Okay, what is that? Is that the gift certificate for Brian?
That's the ECC prize.
Okay. Okay. All right, that is all I have on the golf side. Like I said, for the raffles, once the program gets started, the girls are going to be putting stuff on all the prizes. When everything is over, when you guys leave, go back through the prize room and double check to see if you won anything. Everybody, good luck. I know that they sold a ton of tickets out there, which helps this organization raise a bunch of money. So thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to the committee. Thank you to the Stevens family. All of the sponsors that you see scrolling through these boards. Couldn't have been done without any of them. And I want to turn it over to Dennis Sweeney. We were just talking before. He's a Notre Dame grad. He knows Coach, I think, fairly, probably pretty well. You guys ran a long stint together. But, we tried to figure out how to say and introduce Dennis, and all we could come up with was the Notre Dame media mogul. So here he comes.
Thank you, Joey. It's a pleasure and an honor to serve as your Master of Ceremonies tonight as we honor a coaching legend. And, I will go through some of the numbers that are related to Mike DeLuizio. Over 200 wins, 244 wins as a football coach at Notre Dame, 38 years. 2 intersectional championships, state runner-up in the finals in 1998, and 5 Section 4 titles. That's just in football. Basketball, over 300 wins coaching the boys and girls teams. 3 sectional crowns and a Final Four state appearance back in 2006. And in his spare time, he also coached the golf team to 3 Section 4 titles in 2013, 2015, and 2016. So there's, yes, a nice round of applause. An accomplishment that won't be surpassed. When Ron Norman asked me to be the Master of Ceremonies tonight, he said, we want someone who is light, has no message, and you came highly recommended. So here I am, and I said, I'm the man for the job. And our plan tonight is that for those of you who remember the television show back in the 70s and 80s, I know I'm skewing old here, the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast. Well, that's what I'm hoping will be somewhat of tonight's event, honoring Mike. In those celebrity roasts, if you remember, it went from Frank Sinatra to Johnny Carson to Lucille Ball, and there was a host of people who spoke. They highlighted their accomplishments, but they also gave a little roast to the speaker. So you won't see Dean Martin or Foster Brooks or Don Rickles walking through that door tonight. If they do, we've got a story. But we will have a dais of people that will come up and talk a little bit about Mike and tell the real story of who really is Mike DeLuizio. So, with that as our backdrop, I'd like to bring our first speaker up, John Mayo, who is the founder and main organizer of the Joel Stevens Memorial Golf Tournament. Come on up, John. John's a 1993 graduate of Notre Dame. He was inducted in the Chemung County Sports Hall of Fame in 2018, and he's the owner, founder, and head trainer for New York Sport and Fitness. John Mayo.
I wish I knew we were doing a roast, because I would have this whole thing's out the window. But anyway, Joel's giving and selfless nature is something I admired greatly about him, and one of the many reasons why 20 years ago we decided to establish this tournament in his memory. Our first goal was to keep his memory and legacy alive. And because all of you, we have not only done that, we've also raised over $500,000, some of which has gone Some of which has gone is to build the Joel Stevens Park at Notre Dame, and the majority to local charities and organizations like the Challenger Little League. Foundations I am sure Joel would have been proud to be aligned with. None of that would have been possible without all of you. Many of you have supported this tournament for the majority of the last 20 years. It is your generosity that has allowed us to honor everything Joel was about. Deciding that 2021 would be the last year was not an easy decision. But I have an opportunity to celebrate Coach D, and seemed just like the perfect way to end the tournament on a high note. I'm sure Joel wouldn't want it any other way. I'm proud to announce the proceeds from today's tournament will be used to establish a well-deserved tribute to Coach D and his coaching career, as well as many athletes that he influenced and mentored to reach their potential. I've been lucky enough to be a ball boy, a player, and a coach for Coach D. As a ball boy, I learned that football was definitely a sport I wanted to play. As a player, he taught me what it took to be a winner, and more importantly, a good person. And as a coach, he taught me all the best places to eat on scouting trips. Kidding aside, he taught me the impact sports can have on young athletes. He taught me what happens on the field goes above and beyond the success of the game. Usually through examples of how Joel lived his life. That even though it's fun to win, it's not the most important thing. The relationships you build will far outweigh the wins. And the work you put in will determine your success. It's no surprise that Coach D is one of the winningest coaches in the state. My favorite Coach D quote is, "Adversity doesn't build character, it reveals it." Something I reminded myself often throughout my life and a lot this past year. I think I speak for anyone who has had the privilege to play for Coach D when I say the impact he had in our lives extends well beyond the field and the court. Thank you again for your support through the years, and let us all raise a glass to Joel and Coach D.
Thank you, John, very much for what you've done in being the organizer for this tournament. Congratulations on an outstanding event each and every year. At this time, I'd like to call forward Joel's parents, Ron and Joyce Stevens.
We would like to start by sincerely thanking the tournament organizers, the friends, sponsors, teams, Notre Dame and staff, and the local news media that have faithfully supported this tournament over the last 20 years. We would also like to thank the Elmira Country Club and staff for doing such a great job hosting this special event. A huge thank you especially goes out to Joel's Notre Dame teammates, families, and many friends who organized and helped support the tournament and the Notre Dame Memorial Park that will continue to share Joel's memory and legacy for years to come. We are so very grateful for your hard work and commitment to honor Joel in such a special way. You all mean so much to our family. There is no doubt that Joel will be humbled and very proud of the support and the financial impact this tournament has had on the various deserving organizations over the years. But we're here especially to recognize Coach D and Jane. It is truly our honor and privilege to pay tribute to them. Without question, Mike and Jane have had a huge impact on so many who are here tonight. For our family in particular, Coach and the Notre Dame community played a major role in helping Joel live out his dream, a dream that would never have happened otherwise. They became surrogate parents, extended family, a role that they have filled for many throughout the years. But we know this was commonplace. The special times with Mike and Jane and the various Notre Dame friends and extended families have positively touched the lives of countless others. Throughout Mike's 40-year career, he has had a significant impact on the Notre Dame school, families, and students, mentoring and sharing important life lessons. He and Jane have continued to keep in touch with their kids as they have gone on to establish their own careers, families, and places in the world, making significant contributions because of his leadership and the love and support he and Jane have shared throughout the years. We know that everyone here can recall special personal memories, but we would especially like to thank Mike for his book, 5C Hero, that continues to share Joel's faith and his determination to face life's challenges with strength and perseverance. Coach, your life and legacy exemplify these same traits. So, for our family, you and Joel will always hold a special place together in our hearts forever. Now, on a lighter note, when we first came to Notre Dame, Coach forgot to mention some of the details of the parent requirements we would need to fulfill. Working bingo, casino nights, etc. However, it turns out that we met the wonderful Notre Dame staff and families, and in the process, we enjoyed every minute of it. We also discovered there is still hope for us in our later years, since we remember observing ladies in their 80s still able to keep track of 15 bingo cards at one time, along with the numerous bell jar tickets and winning big, something like Mike often does on his trips to the casinos. And we can't forget to mention food. Following many of the twice-a-day preseason football workouts, the boys would develop enormous appetites. The local restaurants looked forward to their business since they would be extremely busy for the next 2 hours. Party pizzas, wings, cheeseburgers would be devoured in short order. But of course, Coach always set a good example. He always ordered salad. And as we all know, motivating and inspiring student athletes to push beyond their normal limits is a very important characteristic of a successful coach. So, during one of our first visits with Coach and Jane, we observed this firsthand. When Jane brought their dog Boomer into the room to be introduced, Coach yelled, "Touchdown!" And immediately, Boomer stood up on his hind legs and threw his paws into the air to signal the call. It was clear if Coach could teach and motivate an adorable, overweight, older canine to perform like this, he must have some coaching ability. Of course, watching Mike coach was exciting. From executing well-planned strategies, making needed changes, relying on his natural instinct and pure love of the game. There were also times when he was willing to help out the referees by passionately making corrections to some of their calls. Coach was also known for his passionate pre-game speeches and positive post-game team reviews, and at times his emphatic post-game corrective action that could easily be heard outside the locker room. But truthfully, he always inspired faith, confidence, and total commitment to Notre Dame, to the game, and to each other. Mike and Jane, thanks for sharing your gifts and bringing your awesome sense of humor, dedicated friendship, generosity, and encouragement to all of us. Thank you also for sharing Joel with us. His legacy lives on through you. We know you will continue to inspire, encourage, and support your family and friends and others you will meet in the years to come. We are so blessed to have you in our lives.
Thank you, Ron and Joyce. And I'm very happy that Joyce brought up Jane. I'd like to recognize Jane DeLuizio, wife of Mike DeLuizio. Please stand up, Jane. You just... Jane and Mike have been married for 32 years. So recently I asked Mike, I said, what's the secret? How do you do that? How have you lasted this long? With a gleam in his eye, he said, you know, Dennis, when Jane and I got married, we made an agreement. Jane would make all the minor decisions, and I would make all the major decisions. And believe it or not, in 32 years of marriage, we've never had to make a major decision. At this time, I'd like to have one of Mike's lifelong friends and coaching colleague, Dana Carpenter. Dana, as you well know, yes, Dana is an Ernie Davis Award winner when he played at Elmira Free Academy. 4 years playing defensive tackle for the University of South Carolina Fighting Gamecocks. And he played 2 years of pro football in the World Football League for the New York Stars and the Charlotte Hornets. Please welcome Dana Carpenter.
Wow, what a bunch of beautiful people. Wow. Really. If I would have known that he was going to treat me like he's treated me since I got here, I would have attacked this a little bit different. But I can't, it's not going to be all that easy for me here, but I can't change it now. So I'm going to go with what I got. So I'd like to thank John Mayo for inviting me to say a few words tonight about two legends, Joe Stevens and Mike DeLuizio. One I've known briefly, and one I've known, I was going to say too long, but that's not true. I've known him since the mid-'60s. I wanted to commend John Mayo, Jeff Sapkowski, and all the people behind the scene that have put on this golf tournament in Joe's name for 20 years. This is the last year of the tournament, but the legacy of Joe Stevens will undoubtedly continue. The memorial of Joe, Coach DeLuizio at Notre Dame High School is absolutely beautiful. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. and Mrs. Stevens and family. The first time I met Joe, didn't take me long to realize this guy was a very special person. I heard a lot about him from Coach D and followed him during the season when me being a coach myself. But meeting him in person was a very memorable experience. He was so friendly and considerate, a wonderful young man, so humble, kind-hearted, and brotherly. He made an incredible impact on so many. I can't attempt to get into Joel's legacy. I really wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't want to miss any of his accolades and achievements that he so much deserved. But what I will do is recommend to everyone the book, The 5 C's, the Joel Stevens story, written by Coach D, his mentor. Christianity, courage, compassion, character, and commitment. This book covers Joel's legacy in its entirety. It also is a very special tribute to the Stevens family. You don't have to worry. You don't got to worry. I've known Coach D for at least 50 years. Through those years, we've developed a very strong friendship. We've known each other so long that we've even developed a secret handshake. Don't really know how that happened, but we have one. The times we've had in all phases of our lives will always be cherished. When we get together, we laugh and talk about the old days, but certainly not forgetting the present. Again, I couldn't begin to elaborate on all of Coach D's accomplishments. He's made a huge impact on our community and touched so many lives. Tonight I've chosen not to talk about the past, but to talk about the present and share my thoughts of Coach D and family. Mike is an amazing person whose passion for life can be felt with all his interactions with people. He inspires us all to better ourselves each day. While many know him for his achievements, his impact as a husband, brother, uncle, and friend are far greater. When I was sick in 2015, Coach D came to visit me to tell me he had just left Joel where they prayed for me. I asked that all continue to pray for Coach D, Jane, and the family at this time. Friends mean so much to me. Praying is the best thing friends can do for good friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Can say when I was broadcasting the games, I always was interested in how Mike at times would make up plays on the fly. In fact, his assistant coach Ron Norman would say he'd map out a play on the field, on the ground. Well, that kind of ingenuity works when outside of the football field. Recently, Mike and Jane flew down to Florida, and you know how flying today can really be a challenge. The airline seats are so small and they're uncomfortable. Well, on a recent flight, Mike had a way that, he could create more space for himself, especially when he was in the middle. There were 3 seats and Mike's in the middle. So he uses this tactic that seems to work every time. He turns to the person next to him and says, pardon me, are you going to use that sick bag? I usually need more than one every night. Always thinking Mike DeLuizio. Our next speaker, nice transition right to our next speaker, right, Mike? So, former WNY TV news sports director, Mike Eisenberg. He covered Notre Dame sports for 6 years. After he left WNY, he had several jobs along the way. And one that really stood out to me, he served as the coordinating producer at Fox Sports Detroit, where he won 11 Emmys. He was also, in his spare time, he wrote 3 books, of which one reached the top spot as Michigan's top seller. Since May of 2019, I should say, Mike has been working with the Napoli Management Group as a TV talent agent. Please welcome back to the community, Mike Eisenberg.
So when John Mayo, I don't know that I've actually ever called him John, asked me to say a few words about my friend Mike DeLuizio, I can't explain how big an honor it was. Now, there are some people that you never forget the first time that you meet them. They have that type of impact. Mike DeLuizio is one of those people. It's only fitting that we honor Coach D on this, the final Joel Stevens golf tournament. To quote the famous philosopher Forrest Gump, Joel and Mike was like peas and carrots. Joel was lucky to have 2 families, his own, along with Mike and Jane DeLuizio. Heck, Mike even wrote a book about Joel, which he once told me equaled the number of books that he had actually read. 1. Knowing the Stevens clan has been such a blessing for me, they call me their Jewish son. It's still amazing that we're coming up on 23 years since he left us. I literally think about him at least once a day. That's how I feel about the DeLuizios. The first time I came across Mike was on my job interview at WNY TV. It was October of 1989. The Crusaders were getting ready for another big game, so the station sent me to see how I would do go to Notre Dame and get some preview sound. So I did some quick research because kids, there was no internet at the time. And I was on my way. He was nice. The interview went fine until he told me about a play that his team was going to run. Instead of just explaining it to me, Coach decided to show me by pulling up his shirt and using shaved areas of his chest and stomach to illustrate the play. Talk about a first impression. You try to get that vision out of your head. Now, there is one footnote. Mike claims that he had had a stress test the day before, and that's why his chest was shaved. I'm not saying that he's lying, but you be the judge. When I think of Mike, aside from that terrifying flashback that keeps me up at night, it's his humanity that always comes to mind. During a game, Coach was all business. Off of it, well, let's see. There was the time I came into his office to get his picks for the NCAA basketball tournament. When I got there, Mike was wearing a car dealer's visor full with flashing lights. Another time he made picks by throwing darts. Let's just say that Mike was a much better coach than he was a prognosticator. But my favorite Coach D story is about how he always stood up for what he thought was right. One night we had a pickup basketball game at Notre Dame. We had a special visitor, future NBA Hall of Famer Dikembe Mutombo. I was fortunate enough to be on Dikembe's team. Mike was not. There was a play where somebody called a foul, and Dikembe, all 7'2" of him, was arguing. And there came Mike. He came up pointing his finger in DK's stomach, telling him, "Respect the call." Yep, Mike has always been a man of principle. That principle was on display the night that we had him come to WENY and join me as a celebrity sportscaster. One of the highlights we showed had a referee making a bad call. When we came back on camera, Mike had a doll and had ripped the head off of it. I think my line that night summed it up when I looked at the camera and I said, "This is the man that's teaching your children." The reality of it, though, is that parents couldn't ask for a better man to be teaching their kids or coaching their kids. I once asked Mike why him and Jane never had any children of their own, and Mike explained he had hundreds of kids, all the students at Notre Dame. When Joel got sick, he told me that he was glad he'd been chosen to get this cancer because it gave him a chance to spread his message. Obviously, no one would want to get ALS, but Coach D is showing everyone how to fight with dignity and courage. Whenever you talk to Mike, he's always asking what's going on with you, and we remember the great times that we've had over the years. Our relationship is one that we might speak once a year, but it feels like we haven't spoken in 10 minutes. To say that love and humor are the best medicine, well, judging from the people that I've spoken with today, Coach, you're in good hands. Jane recently informed me of a little-known fact, and I know this is going to stun everybody. Sometimes, on occasion, Mike can be a little bit stubborn. So on behalf of everyone, Mike, we are all here for you, just like you've always been here for us. I can honestly say that you've touched the lives of every single person in this room. Don't be afraid to lean on us. I want to finish by quoting another famous group of philosophers, the Golden Girls, and say thank you for being my friend. You'll never know how much you continue to mean to me and how much I love you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker, lifelong friend of and coaching colleague of Mike, Mike Johnston Sr. Mike has assumed many roles at Notre Dame over the years. He's been school counselor, business math teacher, guidance director, head football coach, head basketball coach, assistant principal. His 1978 boys basketball team was the Class A state champs. However, I want to publicly acknowledge Coach Johnston because he gave me my start in broadcasting. I did broadcast on and off for 15 years. And the reason why I say that is that Coach Johnston, his first year as the varsity basketball coach at Notre Dame, I was on his team, and I was a senior, and I didn't receive a lot of playing time. I was usually sitting at the end of the bench. Little did Mike know that I was practicing my play-by-play while he was coaching the game. In fact, here's one that I know that I did. I'm reenacting from back in the mid-'70s. It's a battle for first place here at Notre Dame High School. It's bi-state division of the STC on the line between the Waverly Wolverines and the Notre Dame Crusaders. We're in quadruple overtime. Score tied at 83 apiece with 1:25 left. Oh, and junior Mike Burns has just fouled out of the game, forcing ND coach Mike Johnston to take a timeout. Let's go down to the huddle and hear what he has to say with his assistant coach and JV coach Dan Minch. Dan, who do we have left on the bench? Mike Sweeney is the only player we got left. Dan, how fast can one of your JV players get dressed? With that, I'd like to welcome Mike Johnston.
That is actually true. I'm going to go chronologically in meeting Mike DeLuizio. We go back probably 50 years, starting in the 70s, playing softball together for Uncle Charlie, Red Ball Express, and touch football. And I want to talk about, you know, how offensively creative he is. I mean, he'll run plays just to confuse the other team so he can run something that he knows is going to work. So anyway, softball, very strong offensively, could hit anybody. Defensively, we used to always have the student-faculty game. And I had a sporting goods store at that time, Mike Johnston Sports World, so I did up T-shirts for everybody. And of course, because he was so offensively minded, I put Mr. Defense on the back of his. So we play the game. He's, you know, high scorer in the student-faculty game and, you know, kind of bragging about himself, what he did. Didn't bother to compliment all the people getting him the ball when he was open. So we get to Eldridge 2, and we're playing, don't remember who it was at the time. Anyway, he decides to wear that T-shirt from the student-faculty game, Mr. Defense. So he's playing third base, line drive right between his legs. My Uncle Charlie goes, "Mike, let's go, make a play." Very next hitter, right at him again. Fumbles the ball, can't make a play. So Charlie yells at him again. He goes, "Timeout." He goes over, takes the shirt off, turns it inside out, so Mr. Defense isn't showing anymore. I guess he showed Uncle Charlie. Then we go back, touch football. He's bragging. I can hear him after the games. He always went to Danny's timeout. And he's talking, yeah, I made 10 catches. You know, I made some catches that were really tough. Johnston didn't get the ball quite where it should be. And then, of course, so my comeback is, well, what about the one in the end zone that you dropped for a touchdown? Yeah, you know, you always remember the one I dropped. You don't remember the 10 I caught. So basketball. So 76, 77, JV coach, first time. He is nervous. He hasn't coached, and I coached JVs for Paul Manikowski in 1973, and then he left and went to Elmira College, and I was given the varsity job. So I said, "Mike, come on, I need you to do the JVs." He said, "Okay, I will, but help me out." So I didn't realize what I was going to do, he was going to exactly do right after me. So he said, well, can I just go to practice and kind of do what you do? And I said, sure. So I said, okay, let's warm them up. You take the JVs at your end, I'll take the varsity at my end. So we stood in the center circle and where the jump ball is, and I was on this side saying to my team, okay, let's go layups. He had his back to me, okay, layups. I said, okay, let's go. Shell drill next. He'll go, shell drill. So, I mean, he was perfecting everything. He was just, he was quick, I'm telling you. 1981, Coach D took over the football program. I wanted him to take it over in 1980. He said, no, let me work with you for a year, and so we did that. And so in 1981, Coach took over as the head coach. 1982, my son Mike was going to be a freshman, and he said to me, would you mind coaching the JVs? Could you help me out doing that? I said, sure, I'll help out for a couple of years while Mike's on the JVs and everybody else. And so Coach D asked me to do the JVs for 2 years. I said, sure, I'd help. So he decides to get a little frisky. And I know he's told this story to somebody else today outside that I introduced to him. And so all of a sudden, I'm the athletic director. He's the head football coach. I'm the JV football coach. He goes, Johnson, bring the balls over. Yeah, he really in charge now. You know, he the head coach. He goes, Johnson, bring the balls over. Then so he does that like 3 days in a row, and I just go with it. I go, what the heck? So finally, day 4, I walk up to him. I say, Mike, you're the head coach, right? Yeah. And you're going to get the balls, Johnson. I go, do you know who signs your checks? He goes, okay, Coach Johnston, I'll take care of the balls. Don't worry about that. In 2016, we I get to come back to Notre Dame and help coach Ron Norman, Moose, John Mayo with the team. In 2018, because our numbers were shrinking, Coach said to me, well, what do you think about us going 8-man football? And I said, I think it'd be great. He said, really? I said, I'd really surprised that you would say that. And I said, because we can keep our own identity as Notre Dame. So we did that, went 11-man to 8-man. We were learning on the fly, really. I mean, we're looking at YouTube, we're looking at 8-man because it's a little different than 11-man. You don't have quite as many people covering the same width and length of the field. So about game 3, I rarely ever say anything to him offensively because he wouldn't listen anyway. But I said to him, Coach, I think slant, this is like game 3. Now we've had like 2-3 weeks of practice, a scrimmage, and we're into game 3. I said, Coach, I think slant is open. He goes, nope, I'm not throwing to the middle of the field. They have a safety. I go, Coach, there's no safety. It's only 8-man. Nobody's in the middle of the field. Right? Right or wrong? So we were adjusting on the fly, and there was no one more creative offensively than that gentleman right there. Yeah. Went the quarterback draw. Let's see. Lastly, in our final season in 2019, we took our team to the 7-man sled. We were working on blocking. And I've been known as being sort of an instigator. So At least that's what my wife says. So we're working on blocking, and I said something to Coach. I go, "Oh, they're doing that right." And he goes, "No, they're not. They're not doing it the right way. You should be doing this and this and this." And then they were done with the drill. So I got on. We were in the golf cart, and I said to Coach, I said, "Thanks. That's how I hoped you'd respond to that." So I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been for me to work and be friends with Jane and Mike for, like I said, nearly 50 years. We've known each other, played on teams, coached together, and all that both of them have done for the Notre Dame community. And I was thinking 38 years, there's got to be some kids who are parents now whose kids have played for Mike. So the longevity of the goodness that he has brought not only to Notre Dame but to the Elmira community doesn't get better than this man. As I've said other times, he's the best of the best. So thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker, 2001 Notre Dame grad, two-time Ernie Davis Award winner, first-team All-State as a senior on Mike D's football squad. Following his graduation from Notre Dame, he went on to play college football for the SUNY Cortland Red Dragons. For the last several years, he's worked at Thurber & Thurber as a podiatry specialist. Please welcome Dr. Corey Kilpatrick.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming to this wonderful event honoring both Joel and Coach D. I had the honor and privilege of playing for Coach for 4 years from 1997 to 2001 and a few years playing basketball, or at least trying. One of my very first memories of Coach, or playing for Coach, came at the beginning of my freshman year. During his always fiery pregame speeches, Coach made the statement, "You show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser." At first, I remember being taken back by that statement. I mean, obviously, aren't we all supposed to be good sports and gracious in both defeat and victory? But only years later did I realize that wasn't actually the point. Accepting defeat wasn't an option when you played for Coach D. And this carried over to life as well and stayed with me long after walking off of Brewer Memorial Field for the last time following a final loss to a difficult Susquehanna Valley team in the playoffs. It meant pushing yourself to the limit and beyond to accomplish what you needed to be successful. There's certainly many games and events that I can name that stand out in my mind. The double pass to beat Leroy in the semifinals at the Carrier Dome, battles with Lansing, a triple overtime win against Corning East, coming back from being far behind, all of which these required going above and beyond and refusing to accept defeat as an option. Of course, there were also tough losses, but not that many, and I can't remember any of them. I can honestly say, though, that the memories gave way to life lessons that have become an invaluable part of the journey that you've provided for young athletes and students for the last 38 years, and myself included. You know, it's always difficult when asked to give a speech about someone to focus in on just one major event. But the '98 season obviously holds a special place in my heart and probably all of ours. Starting and ending at the Carrier Dome with Joel watching us from the field at the start and looking down from heaven at the end. As the wins kept coming, there was a certain drive and feeling of destiny and fighting for something greater than ourselves that I'll never forget. There were many memorable moments from that season, but one event that always stuck out in my mind occurred a week prior to our run into Carrier Dome. We're battling a tough Walton team at Cornell, who really had our number the entire second half of the game. Up by 1 point, they'd stopped us on 3rd and short at our own 30-yard line, with about 2 minutes left in the game. After running the famous no play call on 4th down, we were left with a decision. Do we punt the ball away with a good chance that they would easily get into field goal range and take the chance on 4th down, or take the chance on 4th down to secure the victory and run the clock out, facing a real possibility of defeat if they had stopped us again? I remember we were all in the huddle looking around, and I remember Coach coming into the huddle and looking at all of us and saying, guys, I'm in it to win it. I'm not in it not to lose. And that was enough motivation. We easily made the 1st down and moved on to the next round. And then thank goodness that Walton player shot the wrong gap, because he was a really big guy and there was a lot of momentum coming at us. But joking aside, Coach, if anyone's going to fight this, we know it'll be you. There are no good losers in this group. You've taught us that, and we know you will continue to fight this disease. We know you'll be in it to win it and face this challenge head on. I was only able to meet Joel for a brief moment after a tough win over Tioga Central that year. But I know if he were here today, he would be proud of you, Coach, and tell you to keep fighting and never, ever give up. God bless.
Thank you, Corey. The next speaker really makes me feel old because I had his father as my English teacher at Notre Dame. Chris Spalding is both a coaching and teaching colleague of Mike's. He's a good friend and a family member as he's married to Jane's niece. But Chris is also a very accomplished lacrosse coach. As the varsity lacrosse coach at Lake Highland Preparatory School in Orlando, Florida, he's been named U.S. Lacrosse Coach of the Year, Florida Dairy Farmers Coach of the Year 4 times, and he led his lacrosse team to 4 state championships. Please welcome Chris Spalding.
Thank you for that. I think that's a lot more than I deserve, but all I remember is no penalties, no turnovers, no mental mistakes. I never played for Coach D, and I thought, man, I missed out until I was fortunate enough that he asked me to join his football staff. The years I spent under Coach D were the greatest years of my life as a coach. I learned more football in a 3-year span than most learn in a lifetime. But more importantly, I really learned how to be a coach, how to build relationships, how to be a man, and how to be a good person. Those accolades you mentioned, there's no doubt this is my mentor. I owe everything in the world to him, without a doubt. He's the best, and there's no doubt about it. I think we all agree he's the GOAT. Granted, when I first got on staff, and Corey was playing, Corey was a lot bigger back then, by the way. But as the new coach, I was the go-between between Miranda, who was up top spotting, and Coach D on the sidelines. And this was both a blessing and a curse. I was next to Mike. He was teaching me the offense, and he was trying to, get me really involved. And I got Miranda up top, and I never understood why Mike never wanted to be in the headset. And then after our second game of the season, I figured out why pretty quick. It went something like this. It was 3rd and short, and Coach D says to me, ask Miranda what he's seeing. I said, Coach Miranda, what are you seeing up there? Coach Miranda says, Chris, yeah, that left end is coming up the field. Tell him to run a 23 veer. I was puzzled, probably because he was chomping down on popcorn at the time, and I could barely understand him, but I also don't remember 23 veer being in our playbook, and I'm like, we're in a pinch. I look at Coach D, and I said, Coach, Miranda says run a 23 veer, and no sooner than sooner it left my lips, Coach D looks at me with this look of disgust and says, tell Miranda we haven't run that play in 25 years. Get the hell out of the snack pack and get your head in the game. And so Needless to say, Coach D calls a play. Within 10 seconds, he calls a timeout, and now I'm afraid to ask him, what play did you call? But he comes over. I ask, hey, what'd you call? And he says, legendary response, touchdown. Next play goes 55 yards for a touchdown. I look over at Coach D, just gives me a simple wink. And I said, man, this is awesome. I'm witnessing greatness as it happens. And it wasn't the only time that happened. That happened often. Coach D has always been a few snaps ahead, and while most coaches panic in that situation, he never did. He's always had a plan. He's always been thinking ahead, and he's always got a play to beat somebody. And I know that, he's leaving coaching, and it's sad. We're going to miss him on the sidelines. We're going to miss the pregame speeches. We're going to miss everything. But I know that he's got a plan ahead, and while he didn't anticipate this disease to hit him, I know that he's got a plan to beat it, and he will. Coach, you've been such an inspiration to myself, my family, my mother, my father, my wife, and her family. You will always be a legend when it comes to coaching. But just know this. While Mike DeLuizio is synonymous with football in the Southern Tier, you are way bigger than the game. What you've done outside of coaching has meant more than anything you ever accomplished on the field, and that's saying a lot. Your life will never be defined by the game. You will always be remembered for the lasting impact that you had on everyone who was fortunate enough to meet you. I am thankful for all the years that we spent together. I am truly humbled and honored to be able to stand here today and talk about Coach D, one of my mom and dad's closest friends, my mentor, my hero, and most importantly, I can say this today, my friend. I'm forever indebted to you for all that you've done for me throughout the years, and I want to say thank you. Jane, I want to thank you for all of us for sharing your husband for us for all these years. I know it's been tough, the countless hours he spent away. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but now he's all yours. So careful what you wish for. But really, you two, are the epitome of the best. You both mean so much to me, myself, my wife, and my family, and you guys make such a great team, and we're so thankful to have you in our lives. Coach D, as you move forward, please continue to be a mentor, continue to be a friend, continue to make people laugh, continue to make people smile, continue to be great, continue to inspire, but most of all, continue to live and love like you have for so many years, because we all love you. You are already a legend, but this next quarter will make you legendary. Love you, Coach D. You're the GOAT.
Thank you, Chris. This next story is for all the parents in the room. You know how challenging it is to raise children in today's society. Well, when our children were at the young ages of 5 and 3, they decided they wanted to act like grown-ups. And to them, acting like grown-ups meant saying bad words. So one morning, my wife Cheryl asked our 5-year-old what he wanted for breakfast. And he said, "What the hell, I'll have cereal." And she said, no, we don't talk that way in this house, so you're going up to your bedroom and you're not having breakfast. Well, our 3-year-old daughter, seeing this, my wife then turns to her and said, "What do you want for breakfast?" "Well, you can bet your ass it won't be cereal." Our next speaker, transitioning to a former player of mine, thank God I didn't ruin him for Coach D when he got to Notre Dame. Brian Sheen, a 1991 Notre Dame grad. He was an outstanding player, coaching colleague, and a good friend of Coach D. At Notre Dame, he earned 10 varsity letters in football, basketball, and baseball, all Sullivan Trail Conference first-team honors twice in football and in basketball. He was inducted in 2016 into the Section 4 Hall of Fame, and as I mentioned, I coached him 2 years in CYO basketball at St. Patrick's. Thank God I didn't ruin them for you, Mike. Please welcome Brian Sheehan.
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis was a great coach in his own right. So I'm honored to be a speaker to talk about the legacy of Coach D. I was certainly a good witness to it. My three brothers and I played for Coach in the mid-'80s and '90s. We actually spanned like almost 10 consecutive years between the four of us. I also coached alongside him from 95 to 2005, so 10 years of coaching, and then my son played a couple years before COVID hit. So he started out as my coach and then became a mentor and a good friend. So I'm going to talk about Coach D's legacy and give my top 5 things that make him great. I could do 10, but they gave me 5 minutes, so I figured I'd cut it down to 5. So number 5, Coach is a little crazy, but he's a lot of fun. And I learned this early on, even before I started high school. We used to play basketball behind Gerber's Grill over on McGee Street, which happened to be 2 doors down from where Coach lived. I was maybe 10 years old, something like that. One day we're out there shooting around, and we hear this commotion. There's like this popping noises. There's like metal hitting the backboard frame, and all of a sudden there's like feathers flying all over the place onto the court, and we're getting a little nervous. And then all of a sudden this guy comes out, no shoes on, bare feet, big bushy hair with a mustache, no shirt on, but he's got hair all over him, so you can't even tell he doesn't have a shirt on. And he's got a pellet gun in his hand, and he said, "These damn pigeons keep waking me up outside my window." And it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He became our hero that day. He'd come out many more times while we were there, play horse with us, shooting contests. Sometimes he would stop his car on McGee Street and shoot one-handers out of his sunroof. We'd be feeding him balls until he made one. A lot of fun and a lot of great memories from those days. Number 4, Coach is a great teacher. A great teacher can take the complex and make it simple. Father McDonough did it for calculus, and Coach D did it with football. The play calling, people's assignments, the blocking schemes, everything was made very simple. There were code words like Peter. Ball's in the air, Coach says, "Peter," you run away from it because you don't play with your Peter. Corey mentioned the no play call. We literally had a play called the no play call, where we would just go up to the line of scrimmage and try to draw the defense offsides, and it worked almost every time. It was genius. People think that Notre Dame has all smart kids, but it's not true. We had a healthy mix of IQs on our team, is a nice way to say it. We won because we outsmarted teams. We outsmarted teams because Coach was a great teacher, and he simplified the game for us. 2 more things that make a great teacher: preparation and discipline. He made sure we were prepared. He always preached that you prepare and practice so that you're ready for the game. He'd always start his pregame speech with, "Is there any questions on assignments?" And it was a trap question, like, you better not have a question on your assignment on game day. Well, sure enough, every year, the first game, someone would ask a question, and he'd be, "How do you not know that? We did that all week in practice." He'd be so mad, he'd walk away, wouldn't even answer the question, so one of the assistants would have to answer. But we learned quickly that you better pay attention in practice. That was one of his main things. Discipline was also huge for Coach. Show respect, conduct yourself with class. represent your family and school the right way. Those are things we heard every day. Number 3 reason for coach's greatness. Coach is a great leader. Great leaders have passion. People have talked about, and people that know Coach know he has a lot of passion. Sometimes that passion wasn't constructive. Broken chalkboards, thrown chairs. He destroyed a few VHS tapes before games. One time at halftime of a basketball game, he punched a locker so hard like he was trying to punch a hole through it. And they were new lockers, like these real little compact, stiff ones, and he almost broke his hand. And it was halftime. We spent like the whole second half watching his hand swell up. And after the game, he said, "Skeezer, you got to go look at that locker. Like, something's wrong with that. Like he had punched 100 in his past, and this was the first one that beat him." But he was a great motivator. He knew how to get the most out of everybody. His pregame speeches were absolutely legendary. I was never more motivated to do anything in my life as I was after his speeches. His desire to win was unparalleled. Some of the other speakers talked about that too. There were no moral victories. You never heard Coach say winning isn't everything. His famous quote about winning was, "If they're keeping score, I don't care what the game is, we want to win." And that's what we wanted in our leader. We wanted him to win more than anyone, and it was contagious, and he created a culture where we expected to win. Number 2 reason for Coach's greatness. Coach made the team feel like a family. A lot of times it was like a dysfunctional Italian family. But what family isn't, right? That's what made it real. We had pasta dinners together. We prayed together. We kept our problems internal, kept them in the family. We fought and yelled and then hugged it out 2 minutes later. There was a lot of that going on. But once you were part of the program, you were part of Coach D's family for life. He built relationships with hundreds of players and coaches, went through hundreds of highs and lows, always been there when anybody's needed him. I have 3 kids, and I have trouble keeping up with that. Imagine keeping up with 100 relationships like that. It's truly amazing. And the number 1 reason for Coach's greatness has to be his wife, Jane. I was coaching one night with him after a loss and came home, was being really quiet, kind of disconnected, which isn't unusual for me, but it must have been worse than usual. And my wife was getting annoyed, basically saying, you take this way too seriously. And I said, Coach D lost tonight also. Think about what Jane's going through tonight. You think you have it bad. Coach would be the first to say it. There's no way he gets through 40-plus years of coaching without Jane's support. She's his rock. She helps to keep him steady and sane. She's also very tough. She doesn't let him sulk or complain or get down on himself, and he needs that too. When I heard he had ALS, the first thing I said was, thank God he has Jane. He's in good hands. So in closing, I'd like to say, Coach, Jane, we love you. Your extended family is pulling for you, praying for you every day. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. At this time, I'd like to call forward Jeff Sapkowski. Jeff's been a teammate, coaching colleague, and good friend of Mike's for years. And he is also a member of that 1978 team that under Coach Johnston won the 1978 state championship basketball team. So please welcome Jeff Sapkowski.
Boy, a lot of tough acts to follow, that's for sure. And I know I'm going to cry, so that's one thing we have in common. We do cry a lot. Okay, I'm going to do a timeline here today. And it goes before Mike even was at Notre Dame High School. 1975, Coach Johnston's my football coach. We win, for the very first time, a championship in football. Greatest time of my life. And then Coach Johnston says, I'm retiring from football. And so for a whole year, we're wondering, who's going to take Coach Johnston's place? So summer of 76 comes around, and there's Coach D. Like Brian Sheehan said, hair out to here, mustache to here, Italian as you could be, as bow-legged as you could be. But we fell in love with this guy from the very beginning. I had a relationship with him right from the start. Carl Schiefen. Carl, you here? There you go. Okay, as students, we all loved Mike. And you might not even remember this, Mike, but we used to call him Dell. And he didn't like it. He didn't like Dell. And so the more he told us he didn't want to be called Dell, you have immature teenagers, we called him Dell. And Ski, Sister Walder, called me aside and said, you can't call me Dell. It's got to either be Coach or, Mr. DeLuizio. So she'd be walking by the office, and we'd go, didn't matter. We'd go, hey, Dell. He's like, shut up. After a while, we let it go. We let it go, and that's kind of how our relationship started. A lot of people think he was the assistant principal right from the start. He was hired as a teacher for phys ed and for math. He was the greatest phys ed teacher anybody ever wanted to be a part of. He made phys ed fun. People wanted to go to gym class. He was fantastic. What I loved, what he did, obstacle courses. He would make an obstacle course trying to beat us. We were young and in shape back then, and we would just have a riot with that. On his free time, he'd be in the gym. This was back with Larry Bird and everything, off the wall, off the ceiling, off the pole, nothing but net. He had so many trick shots in the gym. We just constantly our head back and forth, I remember the first varsity football game with Coach D there. He taped our ankles, and he was so much better than Coach Johnston, I'll tell you. Coach Johnston could tape 2 ankles with a half a roll of tape. Mike used a whole roll on 1 ankle, so we loved him. So very first game, I don't know if you remember these things, Mike, but I do. He tapes a medal to my ankle. A holy medal, okay? So I wouldn't get hurt, whatever. A big game would come along. There comes another medal, okay? I think by my senior year, I had like 6 or 7 medals. And the thing is, when we're all taped, all the athletes know, when you have your ankles taped, the first thing game's over, you want to get that tape off your ankle. You don't know how many times I threw those medals away. And I had to go in and find them. And on the reverse, Mike, something you don't know, and I know I did this for Joel, I gave those medals back to some of the special athletes we coached through the years. Yeah, I've known Mike for 45 years. I've coached with Mike for 30 years. There's been a lot of great times. But back on the medals, okay? I wasn't a bad receiver back then when I was in shape, but they used to always talk about great hands, runs great routes, whatever. Nothing ever about my speed. Well, I wasn't fast because I had seven medals taped to my ankles. I couldn't even move. Oh, just completed. I could have killed him. Okay, 1978, sports banquet. We're all in the auditorium. Okay, somehow I won Athlete of the Year, and I'm not focusing on that. Happiest day of my life. I'm walking out the back. There's Coach DeLuizio, first one to shake my hand. Congratulations. I don't know who voted for you. You remember that? Oh. You heard a lot of the guests tonight talk about City League football. Now, I'm really talking about football, this whole thing, because people that played football know what football is. Football is life. You know, it means so much to us, the game of football. Well, I'm in Niagara. I'm a student in Niagara. I went to school for 4 years, and I worked up there for 4 years. I used to drive home for City League football games just to play football with him. And I'm serious. And if you didn't catch it, I'm going to also say I think I've had one idol in my life, and he's sitting right there. Okay? I looked up to him like you wouldn't believe. And I'd leave at 5 in the morning to play an 8 o'clock game, you know, at Brand Park. But you've heard stories about him making up plays. He was the quarterback. He was our leader. We'd be in the huddle, and he would, on the ground, map this out, and we'd run it, boom. And the very next week, it was a play in the Notre Dame High School football playbook. But football, you know, Carl, I talked about Carl Schiefen. Carl, come home, play with him. Bo Manuel, Coach Mirando, Dana Carpenter. You know, oh God, we loved playing football with Dana. It was quite a thing. But again, our leader, our quarterback, was coachy, and I actually took his position as receiver. So I was very, very excited with that. Probably then I came back to Niagara, came back to Notre Dame in 1986. First thing I wanted to do was be a part of the coaching staff. In 1987, I did become part of the coaching staff. And it was the greatest accomplishment, really, at that point. I got to coach with my idol, Coach E.D. Okay, we were very successful. I coached with him for 30 years. Maybe not totally coaching all the time, but what a successful program. He knew, I remember my first year, he'd call a play. I'm like, why in the hell is he calling this play? It's not going to work. And then a couple plays later, he'd do it again. It was like a chess game. He was 5 moves ahead. Later, boom, touchdown. It was all because of those 2 plays that weren't going to work. It set up that play that went for a touchdown. It happened all the time. He was a genius on the football field. Being a part of the coaching staff, we got to scout. And I found out that Mikey D knows every restaurant in the southern tier and the northern tier. You mention a restaurant, he would tell you what they're famous for. Oh, I got one you've never been to before. Oh yeah, their prime rib is the best. You know, we'd go on and on and on. You know, so Sopranos. We would usually have Friday night games. Saturday morning, watch a little bit of the JVs. Then we would be on the road, go to Sopranos. We would get our subs or whatever. Coach would always drive, and he probably shouldn't have. But first thing, gets in the car, reaches under the seat, gets his towel, puts it over the top of him, puts it And we're going down the road, and we're going like this. But we got there every time. Every time. The one thing that really sticks with me with the scouting is one time we're going down the road after we had eaten, and Coach D, well, we all know that when we travel down the highways, there's certain organizations that pick up the trash along the highway and put them in bags. Okay? Well, we're going down the highway, and out of nowhere, he goes crazy. I hate it when people throw trash on the side of the road. And I go, seriously, Mike? He had no clue that there's people out there picking that up. That was a riot. Oh, coaching, probably halfway through. Well, let me stop real quick. Early 90s, very special person entered our life, Joel Stevens. And we've talked about so many things about Joel. Greatest athlete I ever coached, and Brian Sheehan just talked. Notre Dame is blessed with great athletes. Joel, we'll go on and on to say the great things about Joel, not just as an athlete, but a human being. Okay, he was something. And I remember we would always thank God for Jane, because we would eat on Saturday, and then on Sunday we had the coaching meeting on Foster Ave, and Jane would be making a meal like you wouldn't believe, okay? But we used to slow that tape down, and I was talking to Moose about this the other day, and he goes, yeah. I said, Joel would be running down the sideline. Every 2 steps, he would cover 5 yards. And that's how they would measure speed. And Moose said that he's a 2.5 guy. And there's not a lot of guys over the course of our 30 years that I've been with Mike that could run that fast. It was that athletic. He was a very special athlete. There's no doubt about that. We love Joel, and Mike talks to Joel every day. Okay, about 2, 3, 4 months ago, I don't forget why you were at my house, but I'm coming out, and he goes, Ski, hold on. I'm saying my prayers. He says his prayers every day. He said, I pray for you, I pray for your father, and I pray for Shelby, your dog. And I pray that we don't fall. But he does. He says his prayers every single day, and I'm honored to be in his prayers because I know who he's talking to, number 24. About 15 years through our 30-year coaching relationship. Remember the keys, Mike? Remember you couldn't find your keys? Oh, yeah. He drove home 3 or 4 times. We tore his car or truck apart. You wouldn't, looking for his keys, looking for him. We couldn't find him. And, well, his key ring is this big. It's got over 100 keys on it. And the more I reflected back on it, it wasn't really about those 100 keys. It was the 2 keys to the concession stand that he couldn't use to get something to eat. When we went to defense, he would disappear. He's either in the concession stand inside or outside. You know, he was funny. Oh, and everything's food. I mean, this guy is some. I used to do the pregame. I did the pregame for Notre Dame for probably close to 30 years. And so you get the kids out in the field and do their thing, then you bring them out. Where's Coach? He's at the concession stand before a game, okay? Halftime. Where's Coach? He's getting something. He's in line getting something at the concession stand. He loved his food. There's no doubt about that. Now, one of the highlights of my life with Mike and Joel was we would go to Frederick, Maryland, and play in the golf tournament down there that the Baltimore Orioles put on the Frederick Keys. It was tribute. It went towards. It was all about Joel and putting money together for his foundation down there. And Joyce and Ron would always invite Mike and myself or Moose or whatever, but I think we went down like 5 years in a row. It's first time I ever golfed with him. So valet comes out, gets our clubs. I haven't even looked at them. We get to the cart, and I said, there must be a mistake here. And he said, what do you mean? He goes, look at those clubs. He goes, those are my clubs. Has anybody ever heard of a 15 wood or a 12 wood? And the other thing is, all these woods were held together with electrical tape, and they had strings falling down the sides, and I'm like, seriously, Mike? You know, but this happened during that round. I was talking to Ted, Joel's cousin. We used somebody's driveway. We were kind of about a tree. We're behind a tree. No problem. I'll just pull out my 12 wood, feather a 12 wood over 3 feet. Boom. He did it. I don't know how he did it with those clubs, but he did it. Later on, he got irons. But Mike, excellent golfer, excellent putter. This is the last 2 years of coaching, and 18, if you want to call it coaching, but I was associated with the program, 18 and 19. Jane said to me, Ski, will you just please watch out for Mike? I don't want him falling. Just, make sure you take care of him. I said, I have a bad hip and a bad knee. He's got the foot that was bothering him. I said, Jane, no problem. I got it. Jane, I don't even know if you know this happened, but 2 times. I mean, Mike's one of the brightest guys I know, but sometimes I really question it. 2 times, I'm on the field getting the football. I'm looking out. Where did he go? Where's Mike? And I'm looking towards the sideline, and all of a sudden, I see this bench go up in the air. Mike sits on the end of you know what it's like when you sit on the edge of a picnic bench? It's going to go up. He sits on the edge. It goes flying. Mike's underneath it, and it's like, I know where Mike is. Yeah. But you made it. We can laugh about it now. Just kind of in closing, Mike, you were my idol in '76, and you're still my idol today. I can't tell you how big of an impact you've had on my life. I told you that when you retire, I'll retire. So we're both leaving football together. Personally, what I'm going to miss with football, and some of the people have already talked about it, his pregame talks. Now think about it. He won 244 victories. There were some losses there. So there's let's say 350 games. You know how many pregame speeches that is? Well, I got a little hint for you here, a little tidbit. He used the same speech kind of like every 5 years. He'd resurrect it. I remember Ron Norman, what speech is he talking about today? Oh, it's the one about the geese. Oh, yeah, I already heard that one. But it didn't matter what pregame speech it was. He got the players ready. He got the coaches ready. Another thing I'll miss, although family night, parents' night, it kind of put a wrench into everything, but to hear him say to all the players, go out there and hug your mom and your dad and tell them you love them. And that was from the heart. He did that for 30 years. And it would always break me up because he was tough, but you know what? He cared about the kids more than he cared about victories. That was a definite. I'll refer, Mike, you've said this one time, you said it 30 times. You'll never remember the person you sat next to in homeroom, but you'll remember the guy you lined up next to and the guy you fought with in the trenches to win a football game. And that is so true. If you're a football person, I can remember plays way back in the 70s in the people I played with. And he would say that all the time. And in ending, I'm going to miss, and Coach Johnston started this, but Mike, do you remember how you always ended every prayer? Lady Queen of Victory? Let's say that, everybody. All the athletes, especially, Lady Queen of Victory, pray for us. That's how it always ended after a battle on the football field. And I will take that to my grave. Mike, I love you. Jane, I love you. He's like my brother. There is no doubt. And I'll be with him to the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, everyone has had their opportunity to speak about Mike. Now it's Mike's turn to talk about us. And I'm going to call an audible. I'm going to bring the microphone down to... okay, all right. It's a good thing John's doing that, not me. I think for sure... I could have just brought the microphone over. I know. Please welcome our honored guest here this evening, Coach Mike DeLuizio.
Thanks, Mitch. Thank you. My glasses. If I could just say a few things about the people that spoke already. Brian Sheehan and Danny Pouts, I know when I did hit that locker, there was cement behind it, and that's why my hand crumpled. And a month later, I went to Dr. Gibson and had him x-ray it, and he came to me, Coach, tell me how that happened. I said, well, I was coming down some icy steps, Doc, and slipped and fell. He came back with the x-rays. He goes, I've been a doctor for 40 years. I know a puncher's break when I see one. He says, what'd you do? I told him, I said, haven't you ever been stupid before? He goes, maybe, but I wasn't 45 years old when I punched something. I said, okay. Then I think of Ski talking about the lost keys. All I think of John Mirando, one practice. He came to me, Coach, have you seen my sunglasses? No, John, I haven't. You sure? Let's go around. Let's get in the golf cart and go around and check the last places you've been. We checked for about a half hour. He goes, I don't know where they are. I go, have you checked the top of your head? That's where they were. And I think of Chris Spaulding, too. When he was working at Notre Dame, he came to me, being married to our niece. He wanted to move to Florida. They wanted to move to Florida. And I said, if you're serious about it, Chris, I said, I know a coach or a principal down there. And I said, I'll call him, see if we can get you a job. So I called. I said, could I speak to Mr. Bernatabitz? And he comes to the phone. I said, yes, I'm looking for a job. He goes, if this is who I think it is, you got the job. What do you want to coach? I said, golf. He says, the golf coaches at Lake Highland Prep were Tiger Woods, Mark O'Meara, and John Cook. He says, if this is Coach DeLuizio, that's the one job you can't have. I said, I don't want to coach, I just want to drive the van for him. He says, so. They say lasting friendships are made by giving short speeches. I don't think I'm going to make any friends today. Sorry. Yeah, if the golfers want to leave and the people who've been here a long time, you can go. What's that? Made what? Oh, what? I got brain fog. They say you remember some of the things people say, some of the things people do. You always remember how people make you feel. Thank you for making us feel so special today. It's really important. There's three things that I'm proud of myself for doing. One is marrying this person right here. I couldn't have married a better person, and she means everything to me. The second thing that I did that I'm proud of in this world is that I wrote, like they said, one more book than I read, 5C Hero, about Joel. And the third thing that I'm proud of is that I beat Joe Norman in a long drive contest. Is Joe here? He leave?
No, he's got the prizes. He's here.
Oh, yeah. He was only 11 years old, but I still beat him. And I never went against him again. Somebody was talking about the GOAT, somebody that called the GOAT. My nephews, Joe and Dan Bennett, were home a couple weeks ago, and I took them, 17 people, both sides of the family, took them to Libs, and, ordered what they wanted, and those two guys are 6'4" and 6'5" and 240 pounds, and their kids. So I said, "Hey, goats, Uncle Mike, are you calling us the greatest of all time?" I said, "No, I'm telling you, get out another 200 and help me pay." That's what GOAT stands for, I said. So I want to thank Joel's committee, starting with Moose, on behalf of the Stevens, because whether you like it or not, we consider us family with you guys. So, you guys have done so much for that through the years. And it just, I just found Dom Romeo, that's a beautiful shirt. I just hope Coach D, people understand it's for Deloisio and not some other things that all these people called me through the years. So, Jimmy Barberi here. I'll tell a story about Jimmy, because he was the last game that I coached, and he called and said, "Coach, I left my cell phone in the coach's locker room. Could you pick it up for me?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go back and get it." Went back and got his phone. I looked at it. Now, I'm not a tech person, but I looked at it, and it says 7 missed calls. I go, "Jane, he missed a lot more calls than 7. She goes, "No, you don't understand. This is phone calls he missed." Oh, okay. Because I was going to say he didn't have that good of a game. So, Jane, 2 months ago I had surgery down in Tampa, and thanks God for Mike and Marge Johnston being down there, Jeff Sapkowski helping Jane, Billy and Connie Emick, and it went okay. And I may have to sit down in a little bit, but not yet. Thank you, though. Maybe I'll fall on you. I don't know. I don't know. But that night when we got back to the condo, the doctors tried calling Jane and didn't go through. She didn't hear it. So then later she saw she had text messages from the doctor, so she started reading it to me. And she went too far. And at the end it says, "I hope your father's feeling a lot better." I said, "Give me my cane they're going to see the old Coach DeLuisio. So many. No, that's not right now. You know, there's some people from the 90s team here. That team, we won the state title. And John Mayo, Chris O'Hare, Woodworth, some of those people. And I remember Jeff Sapkowski was involved with us. And I remember going down and they cheated. They asked us if they didn't want us, if we didn't want to play. And I said, no, we're going to go down, we're going to play them. I don't care if they cheated or not, we're going to go down there and win. And when we got on 17, the bus broke down. And all the kids being like me, they're superstitious. So they're going, oh no, this is bad luck, this isn't good. I said, are you kidding me? I said, when Coach Johnston won the 78 state championship basketball team, I was an assistant. The bus broke down going to Rochester. This is a great sign. We're going to win. They all started high-fiving and everything. I get back to the front seat in the bus with Jeff. Jeff goes, I played on that team. He says, I don't remember the bus breaking down. I said, it didn't, but they don't know that. So, you know, I think it was in 2009 that Joel's monument was erected somewhere in there. And sorry. And can you hear me still? Forgot where I was going, brain fog again. But I know that one of the stories I told, and I think Joel came to Notre Dame for academic excellence, for the community, and for the athletic teams. And I think he was following that 90 team because he came in after that next year, 91, I think, or somewhere. And the monument there, and I remember telling this story about Joel there, and it was a CEO of a Fortune 500 company he had to give a talk the next day to his shareholders, and he was in his study at home, and his little 5-year-old son, Porter Weeks, I shouldn't say that. I just made this story up, which I do anyways. Kept bothering Wendell, or whatever his name was. So Mr. Weeks saw he had to get his son out of there. So he saw the back of New York Times, and there's a map of the world. So he ripped up the map of the world into 100 different pieces. And he gave his little 5-year-old son all these pieces in a roll of tape. And he says, why don't you go in the other room, put the map of the world together. When you're done, bring it into me. There's a 5-year-old kid. 5 minutes later, he comes in. The map of the world is perfect. Wendell Weeks looks at Porter and says, you don't know where these countries are. How'd you do it? He says, Dad, on the back of the map of the world was a picture of a man. And when I got the man right, I knew the world would be right. When you had Joel and brought him into the world, the Lord got it right with bringing Joel to us. You know, I talk about Joel all the time. And Joel's thing was, when you give credit to others, you'll never say the wrong thing. It's one thing I learned. And if kindness and goodness and being a good person and helping others added years to a person's life, Joel would have lived forever, because that was him. Thank you. He was so special. And the thing with Joel, And he said to Ron and Joy, his parents, when I told them, Joel, I always used to say, good things happen to good people. And I know Danny Pouch said it to me one time, and he said he'd never wanted to say that again. And I told Joel, I'll never say it again. He goes, Coach, you don't understand. Good things do happen to good people. I go, Joel, how can you say that? He says, Coach, just what he said to Ron and Joyce. I always thought it was my sports and athletics that I could be a role model for people and for people to try to emulate and be the example. I realize it's my illness that I can be a bigger example. Not to say anything, but you think I'm trying to learn from that, and that's why I want to be strong. You know, we visit the monument all the time. A lot of outside schools visit the monument and take their teams there and explain the story. And we go down to Joel's grave a couple times a month. And when you look at March 15th, 1976, and September 30th, 1998, you go, God, he was only 22 years old. You know, it's not fair. But I've learned that the length of a person's life does not determine its quality. What Joel did in 22 short years is incontestable. People, you cannot measure the people he's touched in those years and continues to touch. Now, I'm trying to write a second book about how his legacy continues and how he continues to help people, even with him being away. Here's one right here in front of me that didn't think was going to make it. And we prayed to Joel, and he came through for us. And Joel has appeared to people. If you say, I say that, no. It's superintendents that have seen him at a fire station in Owego. He still is helping us. I just want him, I want the last chapter in the book to be where he helps Coach D one more time, you know. In a world full of hate, Joel was a light. He was the light. Last night I heard about an analogy, how a candle, you can light 1,000 candles from one candle. And even though you light those candles, the illumination it gives off, it doesn't detract from the illumination of that original candle. Joel was that original candle, and he's lit so many other candles for so many people. To my retirement, a year and a half ago, I put my retirement papers in, and I was telling Jane that it's there's stages of coaching. The first stage was you don't know that you don't know. I thought I knew everything. The second stage was don't let anybody outwork you. The third stage for me was winning was the most important thing. And then after you lose 20 plus kids in their 20s that are no longer with us, you realize what's important in priorities. And my priorities changed 20 years ago. It became faith, family, friends, then football. And that's how it should be. And Jane asked, what was the last stage? I said, the stage I'm in now, spent. So spent. I go, yeah. I said, I don't want to be a Roomba. She goes, what's a Roomba? I go, you know those robots on television that you hit the switch and they clean all the floors and everything? I said, I don't want to be that coach that I hit a switch and other people are doing the stuff. I want the vacuum cleaner. I want to be out there doing and demonstrating like you guys do at the gym. And when I can't do that, it's not that it wasn't fun, because I miss the camaraderie. And at the last game I coached, Mike Stevens came over to me as we were packing up the equipment, and he says, "Coach, how many wins do you have?" I said, "I'd have to think the last few years put it together." And I said, "Oh my God, I don't believe it." He goes, "What?" I said, 244. He says, "That's amazing." I go, "No, it's not about the win. It's not about the wins." I said, "It's the number, 244. Outside of my parents, the people that had the two biggest impact on my life was number 24, Joel Stevens, and number 44, Ernie Davis. They grew up 2 blocks from me." I said, "The Lord is telling me it's time." And that's when I decided to retire. Also, 244 was my SAT scores. So I decided to get out of that too. Dana says, "You wish they were 244. You know, the story that we tell is a guy was asked what he wanted his final destination place to be. So he's given a tour of heaven and hell. And first place he went, they took him was hell. And there's tables all like this, and food of every imaginable food in the world. And every person sitting at these tables had a 4-foot fork taped to one arm and a 4-foot spoon taped to the other arm. I heard this from Father Gramke years ago in a homily. That was a long time ago. And the person looked at everybody. Nobody was talking. Nobody was smiling. Nobody was laughing. Everybody looked sick and thin and drawn out. And there's no liveliness there. The next destination was heaven. Person went into heaven, and he looked, and the exact same setup was there, with the same 4-foot forks and 4-foot spoons attached. But everybody was happy and smiling and in good shape and healthy. And then he noticed the difference. In hell, everybody was trying to feed themselves, which they couldn't do with these 4-foot forks and spoons. But in heaven, what they were doing, they were feeding the person across the table from them. And that's, to me, how we wanted our athletic teams to be. Don't stab a friend in the back. Have their back. Be there for people. Help them. You know, feed others. When you feed others, you eat well yourself. Joel felt you couldn't have a perfect day unless you're doing something nice to help somebody else out. What I learned from players and hope I helped them learn from me was winning is important, but not as much as the effort to win is. Again, it should be faith, family, and friends, your priorities in life. Be a champion in athletics, but it's more important to be a champion in life. Be kind, humble, say please, and say thank you. We won a lot of championships, but Jimmy Barberi, one of the big things that has been important to me through the years is winning a number of sportsmanship awards, because it meant we had class and integrity when we were out there. Don't let anyone live rent-free in your head. My guidance counselor told me my senior year, join the service. You're not college material. I said, you're wrong, and I went home and asked my mother, could you help me fill out my application? So I guess she was right. But I just wanted to take courses and prove other people wrong. That's the greatest satisfaction you can get in your life. And that's Cortland State. When I went to my counselor and asked, he was telling me all the credit hours I had. I said, what's my degree in? He goes, what do you want it in? I said, I don't care. Always let the light that shines in you be brighter than the light that shines on you, what Dabo Sweeney said. And I'll tell you, being around Joel, you needed sunglasses because the light was so bright. Make friends and try to never lose one. That's important. Everyone can be nice when you're watched. It's what you do when you're not being watched that shows your true character. To be successful, surround yourself with good people. That's what my parents always told me. And those who fight the hardest are usually the last to surrender. That's what I'll do. God has a plan. Life always isn't a straight line. There's turns and twists and potholes and everything else. But you keep fighting because it's not over until the man upstairs says it's over. I was successful here not because of the wins and losses. It's because of the friendships that we've made through the years. That's what makes me so successful. And it's because I don't care about the other things. I just know that there wasn't one day in 45 years I didn't wake up and not want to go into school, go to practice, or go to a game. Greatest accomplishment for me is watching kids I have coached grow up and be productive, kind, caring, unselfish citizens who contribute in a positive way to our world. Along with that, I have watched them get married, have children, raise families, and hopefully pass on to them some of the memories we shared through the years. To me, that is the greatest joy of my profession that I've chosen. I told Jane, people at Notre Dame, don't cry because it's over. Smile because all my friends, the players, coaches, staff, parents, my parents and fans allowed it and made it happen. These are memories that I will always cherish and always have until my last breath. However, the person at the top of that list and my very best friend who was there for me through this journey, never ever missing a beat, has been my wife, Jane. She emulates Joel in their blood type. Be positive. Yeah. I don't know, finish, if I can remember. Shaking a little bit, aren't I? Yes, please. Thank you. Back in '78, Mike Johnston and myself went to the Final Four in St. Louis. One night, I was drinking with Bobby Knight, and I don't want to tell you that. All I know is he called me crazy. The next night, I sat next to Coach Wooden. Coach Wooden going to the game, right next to him on the bus. And I asked Coach Wooden, I said, Coach, would you recite that poem you wrote so I can write it down and remember it, memorize it on the way back home? So he read it to me, and I wrote it down. And it was, just catch my breath a little bit. They asked me why I teach and coach, and I reply, where could I find such splendid company? There sits a youngster, strong, unbiased, wise, another later Webster who speaks with a silver tongue. And there sits a doctor whose quick, steady hand may mend the bone or stem the life's blood flow. The builder sits beside him. Upward rise the arches of that church they build. Wherein a minister, a rabbi, or 3 special nuns speak the word of God and lead a stumbling soul to touch the Christ. And all about a gathering of farmers, merchants, lawyers, doctors, gym owners, engineers, teachers, nurses, men and women who work and vote and build and plan and pray into a great tomorrow. And I say, I may not see that church, or I may not eat that food, their hands may grow, but then again I may. And I can say I knew them once, but they were weak or young or proud or bold or brave. I knew them once, but they were a special boy or girl to me. They asked me why I teach and coach, and I reply, where can I be around such splendid and great company? Thank you so much for today.
We have one more presentation, and Jeff, turn it over to you.
There's 4, we had actually 3 flags framed. One for Mike and Jane, one for Ron and Joyce, and one for Moose for starting this whole program. It's been quite a run. Thank you, Moose, for getting this started and for all the right reasons. Okay, thanks again. And I'll give you yours, but Coach D, I want to give this to you.
That concludes our retirement program for Coach Mike DeLuizio. And Mike, again, thank you for everything that you've done and continue to do. And again, stick around if he's here